An assault rifle hangs from the shoulders of a praying soldier. Armed police direct worshippers. And dozens of cameras scan the crowds of pilgrims. For billions of people, this is the holiest city on earth. I'd made it to Jerusalem. To get here, I'd cycled almost 1,000 kilometers alone through Israel and the occupied West Bank, documenting the reality on the ground as I went.
Someone's gone around here and crossed out all the Arabic writing on the signs. So that sign's been drawn over with Stars of David.
Before crossing from the occupied West Bank into Jerusalem, a city split into two halves. The majority Israeli Jewish West Jerusalem and majority Palestinian East Jerusalem, where weapons and worship stand side by side, highlighting the two faces of this city. On the one hand, sitting at the heart of three major religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, where pilgrims are so moved that you'll often see them in tears, wandering between religious sites. On the other, caught in conflict between national and religious identities.
The Israeli government's approved the construction of 3,400 illegal settler housing units that would effectively cut off occupied East Jerusalem from the occupied West Bank.
Here now you have like 10 houses they want to steal, and they want to building in this side 22 houses for the settlers, so they want to take my home.
So my first impressions as I cycled here was not the throngs of tourists and pilgrims. Instead, it was this.
So this is the wall that divides Palestine and Israel. It looks like this has been burned a lot.
The West Bank wall has been declared illegal under international law, but it's the most visible reminder of how divided this part of the world is. So, what are the roots of these divisions? How do all the Abrahamic religions navigate sharing the holy sites here? And why has the status of Jerusalem been one of the biggest obstacles in peace talks between Israel and Palestine? Quick announcement before we dive in.
Hello, post-production, me again with a quick update. I am a little bit ill at the moment, so if my voice sounds slightly off, that's why. But after the last few videos, some of you asked if there are any ways that you can support the channel, which is super nice of you. So I've just set up a Patreon. There'll be a link in the pinned comment down below. And it's got different perks and tiers, but at a minimum, everyone who signs up gets access to ad-free videos and your name in the credits at the end of each video. And obviously, as you go up through the tiers, there are different perks there as well. No pressure at all, because all of my documentaries are going to stay free to watch for everyone on YouTube. This is just a way to support the channel and help make it a bit less dependent on YouTube ads if you want to. So a big thank you to anyone who does sign up, and otherwise, just in general, thank you for watching. And with that, back to the video.
Even back when I was cycling here at the end of 2022, Jerusalem's fractures were already widening. And as with so much else in this part of the world, these divisions are rooted in war. After the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, which ended in Israel's victory and independence as a state, the armistice agreement that followed gave Israel control of the western half of Jerusalem, while Jordan took control of the eastern half. As a result of the war, 700,000 Palestinians fled or were forced to leave the newly created Israel. It's thought that around 30,000 were forced to leave West Jerusalem. At the same time, over the following decades, 850,000 Jews would flee or be forced to leave the Muslim world. 17,000 were expelled from the West Bank, which Jordan captured, 3,000 of them from East Jerusalem. Fast forward to 1967, and Israel and Jordan are at war once again.
The Six-Day Middle East War echoes along a second front. Israeli forces drive spearheads across the Sinai Peninsula, capturing the West Bank of the Jordan River and occupying the old city of Jerusalem.
The Six-Day War saw Israel capture East Jerusalem and occupy it. By 1980, Israel would fully annex East Jerusalem, and the city was, on paper at least, reunified. The move was regarded as a breach of international law, so East Jerusalem is still widely considered to be occupied territory. Now, take a look at where different populations in Jerusalem live, and you'll see that all that forced movement of people left the city incredibly demographically divided. Jerusalem today has a population of almost 1 million. West Jerusalem, home to around 400,000 people, is 98% Jewish. But on the other side of the city, East Jerusalem, which has a population of almost 600,000, is 61% Palestinian Arab. The remaining 39% that is Jewish is mostly there living in Israeli settlements, widely considered illegal under international law. The difference in demographics is stark, and Palestinians from East Jerusalem have a different legal status to those in the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and those in Israel's recognized borders. Unlike others, they are not automatically granted Israeli or Palestinian citizenship. Instead, they have a, quote, right to apply to become Israeli citizens. But in reality, the process required to do that is long and difficult, and some simply do not want to become citizens of a state they view as an occupier. As a result, only 5% of Palestinians in East Jerusalem have Israeli citizenship, leaving most of them stateless. And today, while Jordan no longer claims Jerusalem, both Israel and Palestine claim the city as their respective capitals. Since Jerusalem is under total Israeli control though, Ramallah, a large Palestinian city in the West Bank, currently serves as Palestine's de facto administrative capital. Now, with all these divisions, if you want to understand Jerusalem as it is today properly, this is where one of its most important dynamics comes into play. A series of sharing agreements known as the status quo. Because there are a ton of holy sites here, many acclaimed by both Muslims and Christians, Jews and Muslims, and even by different denominations of Christianity. And given they all sit in Jerusalem, they are symbolically important to both Palestinians and Israelis. The term status quo comes from a Latin phrase, meaning the situation as it was before the war. It has different elements for the different religious sites here. Some are centuries old, more established and widely agreed upon. Others are much younger and more fragile. I'll explain them in more detail shortly, but for now, you just need to know that they exist, and shape how different holy sites in Jerusalem are shared and managed. Nowhere are these sites more concentrated than in the Old Town.
This is the wall to the old city. This one was built by the Ottomans. It's within these walls that you'll find most of the really important historical sites here in Jerusalem.
Jerusalem's Old Town is in the eastern portion of the city and is divided into 4 quarters: the Muslim quarter, the Christian quarter, an Armenian quarter, and a Jewish quarter. Besides those, there is a large compound, one of the most contentious sites in the Israel-Palestine conflict, known by Jews as Temple Mount and by Muslims as Haram al-Sharif, the noble sanctuary. It's also commonly referred to as the Al-Aqsa Compound. The iconic Golden Dome, the Dome of the Rock that you might recognise from photos of Jerusalem, is smack bang in the centre of that compound. And remember this spot, because it's going to come up a lot. All these different faiths hit you immediately when you're wandering around here. Now, I'm not religious at all, but before I'd even made it into the Old Town, I was stopped to take part in a daily Jewish ritual.
So I'm getting some, what's it called? It's tefillin.
This is called in Hebrew tefillin. Tieran Friedman from London is going to put tefillin in the first time in his life.
Yeah.
And he will be in a few seconds good Jewish. They said to put every morning here against the heart,
Yep.
and here against the brain. פעם ראשונה ששם תפילין, אני יודע. אנא השם הצמיחנה, ושפתם מים בששון. Beautiful, beautiful. You put your hand here on the eyes, and say Shema.
Shema.
Israel.
Israel.
Adonai.
Adonai.
Eloheinu.
Eloheinu.
Adonai.
Adonai.
Echad.
Echad.
They were having me recite the Shema Yisrael, a core part of Jewish prayer that practicing Jews say every day to reaffirm their commitment to God.
אם יהודי היה יודע מה זה התפילין, אם יהודי היה יודע. Now you can ask from the God what you want for him to marry, money, to success, boys. Pray. Please give him what he needs. Amen, amen, amen.
You'll find Orthodox Jews all around the western part of Jerusalem offering to perform this blessing. For them, helping someone carry out the ritual is a blessing in itself. Some days, all this religious diversity seems harmonious. People with different faiths all side by side. On others, like a simmering pot, waiting to boil over, where different religions hold competing claims over the same religious sites.
Wow, this place is like a maze. Yeah, you see a lot of armed security around here. Coming up now, you can see that there's a whole load of armed guards walking around.
Of course, you're always being watched. 1 to 2 cameras are installed every 5 meters in the mostly Palestinian East Jerusalem, where the Old City sits. This network is known as Mabat 2000, and since 2017 it's been upgraded with facial recognition technology. According to human rights groups, it's used to disproportionately track and identify Palestinians in real time. It is a dystopian contrast with all the religious sites and visitors I was passing.
The old city is so important in so many different religions that it's quite intense walking around and seeing some of the people who are visiting, because so many people are emotionally overwhelmed by their visit here. I've seen people weeping in churches and lying across the floor because they're so moved and so spiritually affected by the places that they're visiting. And for me, as someone who's not religious, one of the things that stands out the most is that just how much it means to some people to be here, to come and visit, because for some people this will be a trip that they've been leading up to for years or decades.
I made my way through the winding streets to the second holiest site in Judaism.
I am at the Western Wall in Jerusalem. This, behind me, is the holiest site in Judaism that Jews are permitted to pray at. A lot of people come here and they write prayers down on pieces of paper, and then they stick those pieces of paper in the wall. There's thousands of them in the cracks in the wall here.
This wall is the only remaining structure from the original walls surrounding what Jews call Temple Mount. That is the holiest site of all in Judaism, located on the other side of the Western Wall. It is the site of the 2 Jewish temples of Jerusalem before they were destroyed. The reconstruction of this temple is a huge part of Jewish prophecy, which states that it can only happen after the Jewish Messiah arrives.
This is the place where God's presence is most concentrated. It was in the temple, 2 temples stood, but even now the presence of God here is more concentrated than anywhere else. Of course, God is everywhere, but when you come here, you feel God's presence, you're inspired to be better, to treat people better, to love people, to cling more to God. And so I love coming here to pray, to connect. You're supposed to have a respect and a fear to people. Some people walk backwards when they're leaving the wall, not to turn your back on the walls. I think for me personally, because thank God I've been able to be here many times in my life. Before I was married, when you pray to get married, to have children, now I come back, thank God I have 2 children. So many times in my life, different stages of my life, this has been an important place for me to come pray and come to daven. And so I really view it as I look back and I thank God for all that He's given me, and for all the blessing I do have. And each time I come, a new milestone, a new stage of life, I think of the blessing that God has given me.
I travel more than 12,000 kilometers to come here. So for me, as part of the, I would say, forgotten Jewish, because I'm a descendant from Spanish people, okay, who were expelled from Spain. This is also our Holy Land, right? So I'm very proud to represent my family, because I'm the only one in my family who has been ever able to come to this land. So this wall is everything to us. This is my 4th time here, right? And well, every time I come to Israel, I have to come here to Jerusalem, you know, to relive, I would say, my heritage. This land, you know, has been invaded, owned by many peoples, you know. The Greeks were here, the Romans, even the British Empire was here. So that's why this is a holy place, not only for Jewish people, but also for Christians and Muslims.
The plaza here is split into one section for men and one for women. And if you hang around here for a while, you'll see a lot of prayer, dancing, singing, and even the occasional bar mitzvah. It was a bizarre contrast with what I'd seen cycling into Jerusalem and through the West Bank, just a few kilometres on the other side of the West Bank wall. Despite the heightened security, it would be so easy to visit here as a foreigner and have no idea at all of the realities in the majority Palestinian East Jerusalem outside of the Old Town and the rest of the Palestinian territories. Things do get more contentious, though, on the other side of this wall. And that brings us to the compound I mentioned earlier. Because while for Jews this place is called Temple Mount, their holiest site of all, for Muslims it's Haram al-Sharif, or the Al-Aqsa Compound, the 3rd holiest site in Islam. Before it was changed to Mecca, this used to be the direction Muslims faced whenever they prayed. According to Islam, this is where the Prophet Muhammad travelled on a winged horse before ascending to heaven, where he was given the commandment to pray 5 times a day. One of the fundamental principles in Islam. It's called his night journey. And this is where the newest and most polarising of the status quo arrangements applies. After Israel captured East Jerusalem in 1967, in an attempt to maintain social order, it unofficially implemented some new rules as part of the status quo up here, restricting non-Muslims from entering the compound outside of set hours, and preventing non-Muslims from praying or taking any religious items with them up here. You have to leave all that at the entrance. This is one reason why Jews are not allowed to pray at their holiest site. Although some rabbis also forbid Jews from entering for religious reasons. Since the original Jewish temples here were destroyed, the exact location of the holy sites here isn't entirely clear, so entering could risk accidentally stepping onto sacred ground. Under the status quo, management of the compound was handed to a Jordanian organisation known as the Waqf. This makes it a symbol for many Palestinians, because it's the one tiny enclave of Jerusalem that is not under the total control of the Israeli state. That is what the 1967 status quo is meant to preserve.
I have finally made it to Temple Mount, or Al-Aqsa. This site has been a source of so much tension between Jews and Muslims. When you walk up the walkway to get here, there's a load of police at the entrance with riot shields lined up against the wall. And that's because there are sometimes confrontations up here. Jewish groups who come here have to be escorted by armed guards. Again, it's just more of this weird contrast with all these holy sites and people praying, but alongside them, heavily armed soldiers and guards. And sometimes they're the ones doing the praying as well.
There have been those who attempt to test the status quo up here, but any perceived threat to the arrangement can have devastating consequences. Now, if you've seen my other videos, you'll be familiar with the First and Second Intifadas, the names for 2 Palestinian uprisings against Israel. This is the spot where the second, or Al-Aqsa Intifada, began. The year is 2000. The Camp David summit between Israeli and Palestinian leaders to negotiate peace has failed. Both sides blame the other. Jerusalem and the status of the Old City, in particular the Al-Aqsa Compound, is one of the sticking points that neither side could compromise on. And now, an Israeli politician has made a highly controversial visit to the compound. His name is Ariel Sharon. One day he'll be Prime Minister. But for now, he's still a candidate for the right-wing Likud party. He's the first mainstream Israeli political figure to make such a visit. Until now, most Israeli politicians have upheld the status quo and refrained from visiting. He's escorted around the compound by Israeli security, and he follows up his visit with an appearance on national TV.
The sovereignty over the Temple Mount, it's in our hands now. It will be in our hands in the future.
Riots erupt soon after and escalate into a full-scale uprising. That this would be a trigger for the Second Intifada shows how important and contentious this site is. The uprising will last 5 years, killing around 6,000 Palestinians and 1,000 Israelis. The threats to the status quo aren't over, and things are looking all too familiar today.
Israel's far-right national security minister has visited the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in Jerusalem, and he said he prayed there.
Israel now has its most extreme far-right government in the country's history. 2 of the current government cabinet ministers are straight-up fascists. The Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, is one of them. You've met him in my video about the evolution of Zionism. In 2025, he visited the compound. Now, he's done that before, but this was the first time he'd openly prayed here. He's also claimed that if it was up to him, he'd build a synagogue in the Al-Aqsa Compound. With people like him in power, the prospect of upending the status quo has become more and more mainstream. And in many ways, the arrangement has slowly been eroded over time, as Israel has exerted more and more control over the compound and its surroundings.
Excuse me, time to leave, 5 minutes.
Now, filming up here is also a bit more tightly controlled. Israeli security wouldn't let me bring my microphone with me. So, with no mic and a time limit, I didn't have a chance to interview anyone in the compound. Instead, I headed for another holy site. This time, a Christian one.
The street I'm walking on now is one of the most important streets in Jerusalem. This is Lionsgate Street, and it leads onto Via Dolorosa, and that is the road, or the path, that Jesus carried the cross on before he was crucified. For a lot of people who come here, it's a very emotional experience to walk this path, because it's such a huge part of their faith.
It's also one of the most solemn moments in the Bible. The path finishes at the Church of the Sepulchre, the most important site of all in Christianity, where Jesus was crucified, and where Christians believe he was resurrected. This stone slab is where his body was laid before his burial. And this is the tomb he was buried in.
The holy place for all Christians. Something you cannot describe in simple words. This is hard to explain because this is something that you feel deep inside.
Did you find it an emotional experience?
Of course, yes, very much, yeah. Because you feel that the Christ was crucified here, the pain he went through, and it is emotional.
When I went in there, I saw people were crying.
I think it's touching to their heart because they can feel the resurrection and also the suffering of Jesus. And I came here because I love to live in the Holy Land for serving and for living my Christian life here because I live on the place where Jesus was born. He grew up and he will die in here. I live in the resurrection of Jesus.
For religious sites like this one, the older, more established status quo arrangements apply. Implemented by an Ottoman sultan in the 1700s, These ones run a bit smoother than the one at Temple Mount or Al-Aqsa. And they are perhaps best summarised by an unlikely symbol. Outside the Church of the Sepulchre, a simple wooden ladder. This is the immovable ladder. You see, 6 different denominations of Christianity share this church, and the strict adherence to the status quo means that nothing, from maintenance to construction to cleaning, can be done here without the unanimous consent of all 6 orders. This ladder has been leant up against this window since 1728, representing the commitment of each of those orders of the church to this arrangement. I left the old town and its countless religious sites to wander around the rest of the city. Here, the throngs of pilgrims gave way to crowds of locals and tourists. Still, though, soldiers and weapons were everywhere. It's a reminder of a key part of Israel's military doctrine: constant readiness. Military service is mandatory for men and women here, and many in active service often carry their weapons with them, even when off duty. It's only when you cross town into the majority Palestinian East Jerusalem that you start to understand the other side of the city that Israel keeps away from the media. In another infamous flashpoint between Israel and Palestine, a weekly protest kicks off in the Palestinian neighbourhood of Sheikh Jarrah, where Palestinian families are facing evictions to make way for Israeli settlers.
מכבדים הכיבוש הישראלי ועוזרים לו בכסף ועוזרים בהכל, רק עכשיו שני טמפלים אלה שהם רוצים לגמור על הכיבוש, הם עכשיו לא מעניין.
I'm just walking around Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood at the moment, and this area in Jerusalem has been the center of a lot of protests and unrest because of the evictions of several Palestinian families.
Today, Sheikh Jarrah is a predominantly Palestinian neighbourhood in East Jerusalem. In this neighbourhood are 2 burial sites. One is the grave of a physician of Saladin, the Muslim leader that defeated the European Christian Crusaders. The other is a Jewish high priest from back in the days of the Second Jewish Temple. Now, because of the Jewish connection to the area, 2 Jewish trusts purchased land here in the late 1800s, and Jewish families moved to the neighbourhood. Then came the 1948 First Arab-Israeli War. Now, remember I mentioned earlier the Palestinians expelled from Israel and West Jerusalem, and the Jews expelled from the Muslim world following that war. Well, among them were the Jewish residents of East Jerusalem, and the area around Sheikh Jarrah, which was then controlled by Jordan. At the same time as Jordan expelled Jews from the West Bank and East Jerusalem, it had also received an influx of Palestinian refugees expelled from the newly created Israel. This is when the UN established the Palestinian Refugee Agency, UNRWA. And with the help of this new UN body, Jordan built homes for 28 of those Palestinian families here in Sheikh Jarrah, with the promise that they would eventually own the homes that they were given. But Jordan never actually got round to legally transferring ownership of the homes to their residents. Israel would then capture East Jerusalem in 1967, and the Palestinian residents here were thrown into limbo.
Sacred Wailing Wall, where Israeli Defense Minister General Moshe Dayan prays, pledging never to give up the old city. It's the first time in 19 years that Jews have been allowed to visit and pray at the site of the ancient Temple of Solomon.
Israel already had a law on the books, passed soon after its founding, the Absentees Properties Law. It allowed the country to seize land that had belonged to Palestinians who fled their homes back in the 1948 war. And after Israel formally but illegally annexed East Jerusalem in 1980, it began applying that law to East Jerusalem. So now, those two Jewish trusts who'd bought the land here in the 1800s were able to claim that property back. Here is where the dispute arises. Palestinian refugees were promised homes here, while the two Jewish trusts now wanted the land they purchased back. Numerous court battles followed, starting in the 1980s and lasting until today, until eventually an Israeli court ruled that the Palestinians were living illegally on this land, and the evictions began. But this is still considered occupied territory under international law, so these evictions are widely regarded as illegal. And for a time, this becomes an epicenter of the Israel-Palestine conflict. On the surface, this might seem like a real estate dispute. It's sometimes minimized as that in the headlines. But that conceals a darker reality, because follow the trail of lawsuits and evictions in Sheikh Jarrah, and they'll eventually lead you to a mysterious company, Nahalat Shimon International. It's based in Delaware, in the USA. Very little information is available about it online. There's a couple of names listed here and there, but almost everyone involved in it operates in the shadows. It is a private settler organization, and its stated goal is to reclaim land and property in East Jerusalem for Jewish residents. It's managed to acquire the land that belonged to the Jewish trusts and Jewish families that were expelled from East Jerusalem. That was a surprise to some of those people, like former Israeli Attorney General Ben Yair, a vocal opponent of the settlement of East Jerusalem, whose childhood home, he discovered, now belonged to Israeli settlers. But because of companies like Nahalat Shimon International and expanding Israeli settlements, counter-protesters and settlers often show up here as well.
Every week the settlers they coming here and they want to fight with us. But I tell my people, don't speak with this garbage. For me it's garbage. They hate the families, they hate the people here. They make fire in the houses, they're stealing the houses, they're stealing the land. Here now you have here like 10 houses they want to steal. And you have another 11 houses in the court. So they want to take all the neighborhood and they want to building in this side 22 houses for the settlers and another side 200 houses for the settlers. So they want to take my home. The Jordanian give us the land and the UNRWA, they're building these houses. The American and the British and the France and all Europe, it's behind the Israel. Because that they continue to stealing more and more and more. They're killing every day. Every day they're killing. Nobody tell Israel stop. They continue the occupation. They continue to stealing more and more and more. Okay, so I feel and I want and my hope to stop the occupation to beginning a new life, to be safe. They steal my home, my family in Jaffa in 1948. Okay, and after all these years, they're coming to steal my home after 74 years. Okay.
Do you feel safe when you're leading these protests?
No.
No.
Many times they try to kill me, and I don't afraid. One day they kill me. I don't afraid, because that every day they kill me. Every minute they kill my people. Every second they kill my people. So don't have safe everywhere in Palestine. The settlers, they have the power from the government, and the government behind the settlers. So nobody's safe.
מושחתים אלה חושבים עצמם מגיע להם, שהם מגיע להם. מתי אנחנו שתקנו?
שמעון הצדיק! עוד ספירת שמעון הצדיק! סלח! סלח! אל תרק אותם עדיק, יא מחבל! סלח, אתה מחבל! מוחמד דף! ווילדה היא התמימי! ווילדה היא התמימי! אלה בוגדים, בוגדים, בוגדים! אלה רוצחים טרוריסט! No like is this תומכי טרוריסט, מחבלים! מחבלים! היא התמימי מת! ווילדה היא התמימי! תמימי מת!
Far-right Israeli politicians have stoked tensions here too. Earlier in the year, before I was there, a familiar character, as always, got involved.
Next to me, you can see the improvised office of Itamar Ben-Gvir, who right now is being interviewed by an Israeli channel.
The extremist far-right, now Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir's decision to set up a temporary office here was a spit in the face to Palestinians who'd lost their homes in Sheikh Jarrah.
This is all that's left of the Palestinian homes that were here until recently. So these demolitions happened, I think, a year ago. Everyone that lived here, all the families that lived here, were forced to leave their homes against their will, and they were evicted, and then their homes were demolished. And this was a real flashpoint in tensions between Palestinians and Israelis.
A few days later, at the entrance to the city, an attack sends ripples through Jerusalem.
At least one person was killed, 18 others hurt after two separate bus stop explosions in Jerusalem. The blasts coming during rush hour, less than a half hour apart. These are the first bomb attacks on Israeli civilians since 2016.
A 16-year-old boy and a 50-year-old man were killed in the attack. Dozens injured. Crowds of people show up at the sites of the explosions, many to pray. The perpetrator, who had ties to ISIS, acted alone. A year before the October 7th attacks and the genocide in Gaza, the attack was praised by groups like Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad for conveying, quote, a message to the occupation.
Yeah, feeling a bit shocked from this morning. Probably happened about 7 o'clock this morning. I'm in college just up the road from here. Some of the boys in the college were woken up about 7 a.m. this morning. They heard a big bang. Another big bang followed about half an hour later. But the first one was obviously right here. Injured quite a few people and 2 dead at the moment. These things are usually, a distant thing in your head. But then when it happens so close to home, and you're only living just up the road, it's quite shocking. It's quite unsettling.
after the district's regional police commander makes a statement, a far-right, ultra-nationalist politician turns up, Almog Cohen. Once the centre of a police brutality scandal, he's now the regional coordinator for Jewish Power, one of the most extreme parties in government. Who is the leader of that party? Well, it's Itamar Ben-Gvir, yet again. If you've watched my previous videos on Israel and Palestine, you'll know that extremists like this now have huge sway over Israel's policies. With Prime Minister Netanyahu holding a razor-thin majority in parliament, they effectively have veto power over the government's decisions. Another very extreme component of this coalition is the religious Zionist Party, led by another fascist politician, Bezalel Smotrich, the Minister of Finance. Both of these men are settler extremists and represent the mainstreaming of Israeli Zionist extremism. As I was editing this video, Smotrich unveiled a new plan that Israel will move forward with. It's called E1.
The Israeli government's approved the construction of 3,400 illegal settler housing units in a move that would effectively cut off occupied East Jerusalem from the occupied West Bank. This is known as the E1 plan.
It'll create a 12 square kilometre settlement east of Jerusalem, completing a semicircle of settlements that cuts the eastern portion of the city off from the rest of the West Bank.
Human rights groups say it would thwart the idea of a future Palestinian state. Mr. Smotrich says the decision is a reaction to plans announced by several countries to recognise a Palestinian state at the UN General Assembly in September.
The idea has been floated since the 1990s, but it's Smotrich that's turning it into a reality. When he unveiled the plan, he announced, quote, "The reality finally buries the idea of a Palestinian state, because there is nothing to recognise, and no one to recognise." It was widely condemned by other nations. With Israel continuing its genocide in Gaza, moving towards full annexation of the Palestinian territories, and stepping up its settlement of East Jerusalem, I got back in touch with Saleh.
Hi, Saleh.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very good. It's good to see you. Thank you for taking the time to speak.
Now unable to continue his weekly protests, he told me how things have changed since we met at the end of 2022.
All my neighborhood, all the families now, all the people, they're afraid. They're afraid. They don't sleeping in the night. The sisters, they can make what they want. And if you call the police, they don't help you. Because that they are afraid. They're afraid to make today, one day, to get up in the morning, you can see the buses and they go give you to transfer for the Jordan. They're afraid to speaking. They're afraid to talking. They're afraid to make light. You're afraid if you in your home, you're afraid in the street, you're afraid if you go to your job, if you go, my children, when they go to school, they're afraid. When they come back, it's afraid. You have 12,000 people in the jail. 4,000, they don't make nothing. Just they put them in the jail. Just every day in West Bank, the settlers, they make fire in the houses. They make fire in the land. They're killing. They make what they want. And the Israel government behind what's going there. Now, just now, I'm waiting I don't know which time they coming and they throw my family out. And I don't know which time they coming to give me to leave my home. When I beginning to fight, I want to be everyone safe in my neighborhood, and everybody to not to leave their home. But now they strong. And me, nothing. Without the people in all the world, I am nothing. Before I was speaking and fighting for the people in all the world to saw what's going in Palestine about my neighborhood in Jarrah, how they stay in the houses. But now I can't speak it. I'm waiting for the people what I tell him before all these years to make something to my people, to stop it. I shy to speak about my home, and I see in my eyes every day, every minute about the genocide in Gaza. And all the world, they're looking about us like nothing, just your number. Look what the American is speaking, and Mr. Trump, he's speaking about peace, and he wants peace, and he give them the machine gun for Israel to kill us. The same thing France and the British.
He tells me the settlers in the area are now emboldened, with the most extreme Israeli government in history behind them.
After 7 October, you have everything change. The settlers, they make every day, they throw about my home, stone, they throw garbage. I can't make anything. And if you call the police, they don't make nothing. This was going in West Bank. They help the settlers about us. In Saturday, there was group, Jew friend, and the settlers with the police, with the soldiers, they hit the friend, my friend. You don't have.
Do you say your friend was a Jewish person?
Yes.
And the settlers?
Yeah, the settlers, they hate the Jew. And you know, I tell you before, I tell everybody, I don't have any problem with the Jew. I have problem with the occupation. Who want to steal my country? Who want to steal my home? He killing my people.
Is there any organization, any groups that you can turn to for help when you need it?
Now, in this time, nobody can help. If you see United Nations, there was before to help Gaza, and they give in West Bank and Jerusalem. The schools in Jerusalem, they close. The office of the United Nations in Jarrah, they close, and they took the big building, and they want to make their big building for the settlers in my neighborhood. Okay?
Israel banned UNRWA, the UN agency that supports Palestinian refugees, from operating after the October 7th Hamas attack, when it emerged that a handful of employees may have been linked to the atrocities. Now, there have been links between some individuals working for the organisation and Hamas, but independent investigations have concluded Israel has failed to provide any evidence to back up its claim that the organisation as a whole has been infiltrated by Hamas. Still, many countries suspended funding for the organisation, though in a lot of cases this was just temporary. With Palestinians largely failed and abandoned by the international community, it's mostly through grassroots efforts that Saleh feels supported.
What's going in Europe is very fantastic. It's good, but it's not enough just to make demonstration or speaking about the occupation. You must be working now to stop every minute you lose another one, another children, another woman, another people in West Bank or in Gaza. So it's not easy. You don't have any life. You don't have any dream about only just to stop.
Now unable to protest, Saleh is very limited in how he can oppose the occupation.
Look, today I speak with you, and tomorrow I have another Zoom with the German and Italy. And I tell you, every day I have the news. They coming and speaking. But what I tell you, not like the same what I speak before. Before I was strong and I speaking, and I was dream about the people in all the world, about the countries, to push about the Israel country to stop to stealing the houses, and just the people, they want to be safe and they want just peace. Today you can't speaking about nothing. If you speaking about the peace, they put you in the jail. If you speaking about the occupation, they put you in the jail. You can't fighting, you can't speaking, you can't writing, you can't nothing. You just now you number. You day coming, maybe nobody know. Tomorrow morning they coming, thousands of soldiers with police. They throw you and your family in the street, and they can put settlers in your home, and you can't do it nothing. Not only me, everyone in my neighborhood. Example, what's going in Sinjil, what's going in Hawara, what's going in Jericho. It's now it's everybody, everyone in all the world. They saw what they make. Nothing, just they talking. And everyone, every minute, every day, you have lose. The people, they dying just food. You know what the mean food? They're speaking about 20 people, Israel people in Gaza. You have more about 20,000 people in the jail. Nobody's speaking about this. They're dying every day, hundred people. Nobody. They said, no, it's not good. You must stop Israel to stop what you make for us. Nothing. Nobody push about Israel occupation. But today, all the world, they saw what's going exactly, and nobody care about us.
It was painful to see a man I'd met at the head of a protest, fiercely, peacefully opposing the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territories a few years earlier, now facing the loss of his home, while the international community does nothing to stop it, despite his years of advocacy work. And this is the reality in Jerusalem. And despite the rosy picture that's sometimes painted of the city online, you cannot separate it from the policies of occupation, ethnic cleansing, and genocide that Israel has doubled down on. So Jerusalem is two things at once: a stunning holy city and the meeting point of the three Abrahamic religions that some people spend their entire lives hoping to make a pilgrimage to, and a city claimed by both Israel and Palestine as a capital, its eastern half illegally annexed by Israel, where most of its Palestinian residents are stateless and facing the looming threat of dispossession to make way for Israeli settlers. And as the current Israeli government becomes ever more oppressive of Palestinians in East Jerusalem and threatens to upend the status quo, as the genocide in Gaza rages on, and Israeli settlers continue to move onto Palestinian land in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, the wounds and fractures here are only likely to get worse, leaving the holiest city on earth for billions of people also one of the most divided. A big thank you to my first 3 patrons for supporting this channel: Still Skiing at 60, Taffy, and Madison M. Thank you so much for helping to keep the stories coming.